Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today, we're going to be talking with Brian Decker. He is an eight-figure entrepreneur and the founder of Modern Lending. We're going to be having a really awesome conversation about how you can thrive in the real estate business and looking forward to jumping in. As always, check out the links in the description below. And if you have any questions, leave them in the chat. And if you like money, you like real estate, this is the show for you. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the inside. Brian, welcome to Founders Club.
What's up, brother? I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, same, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. I know you're running lots of companies. And we were kind of joking about, we don't want to make this really about mortgages and things like that because that generally isn't the most exciting and sexy conversation. But just to kind of set the context, I know you've been a top 10 loan officer in the nation. But why don't you just give us your quick background on how you built your business, and then we can get into the nitty gritty of how to grow a big successful business in the real estate space and how we can all thrive.
Yeah, for sure, man. So, I spent about 21 years in the industry. I mean, I went to school and graduated to become a CPA. And I went in, I got hired by a company called Deloitte and Touche back then. It's Deloitte, the big four accounting firm. And I pulled my accounting manager aside, and I said, well, hey, man, you've been here 20 years, like how much do you make? You just got a promotion. And he told me, he's like, oh, dude, 20 years, I'm going to make 250 this year. And I went home and quit. And I told my parents, I said, I know I just got hired by one of the most exclusive jobs right out of college you can get, but I quit because I don't want to work my whole life for 20 years of slaving 80 hours a week to hopefully hit $250,000. It's not for me. And so this was back in 2004. Got into the mortgage space, just kind of how everybody starts out. And then really what ended up happening is the mortgage industry kind of collapsed, as we all know, when the world collapsed. And then, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying something. And then we all know the mortgage industry kind of collapsed the world in 2008, and everybody kind of got out of the industry. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to actually make this a career, and I'm going to actually find a way to really elevate myself. And so I ended up being fortunate enough to kind of come up with some really cool marketing strategies. And about 2 years later, in 2010, I was, named the #1 loan officer in the country that year, and spent a lot of time over the next about 8 years working on the boards and, working at, the loan depots and guaranteed rate and kind of all the accolades you can get within the industry. But I'd always been an entrepreneur at heart. I grew up kind of with nothing, and I kind of really had always wanted to go that entrepreneurial route. So in 2019, I got a call from Matt Ishbia, who's now the owner of the Phoenix Suns and United Wholesale Mortgage, and basically said, why don't you start your own company? So I really started building Modern Lending. We grew that to doing just about under $1 billion a year. And then kind of through that, really have just launched a bunch of other businesses, some with my business partner, Tarek El Moussa, which many of you guys probably know him from Flipper Flop and HTV and all that. And then I've really rolled into AI software and, a bunch of other things at this time. But, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And really, I think what really helped me grow is I was kind of the first loan officer that really built a personal brand. I mean, I was having billboards, on freeways in 2011 and Facebook and YouTube, back when it kind of started out, and it, building that personal brand with, really kind of creates that annuity that allows you to kind of take that audience and really can feed it into any of the kind of other harmonious verticals outside of just your, kind of your main golden goose.
Yeah, no, I love that. Couldn't agree more about the personal branding. I definitely want to jump into some of those marketing tactics because I know that's something that's been really successful for you. But also just, obviously it sounds like you made it through the last market downturn and the Great Recession. And right now, there's also a lot of uncertainty in the market. Rates went way up from where they were just a few years ago. And like, how have you kind of pivoted your business to adjust and adapt?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. And so The mistake I feel like that most people make in really any industry, and I learned it pretty hard in the 2007, 2008 crash, is we live our best month is our lifestyle. So whatever our best month was, we just let our lifestyle constantly creep up. And then what ends up happening is we basically treat our business like a personal piggy bank, rather than treating the business as a completely separate entity. And so what ends up happening to most people is they end up not having the necessary funds to weather a downturn to use it to grab market share. And so after learning that in 2009, then what basically happened is I made that decision of I had to figure out a way to stand out from a marketing perspective. And so I think what I personally did was I figured out a way that when you are in mortgage or real estate, you have a lot of times to be very geographically kind of focused. Like, oh, I'm only going to deal with San Diego County, or I'm only going to go in this area. And what happens is when the market share that you can kind of have, that overall market size shrinks, well, guess what? The only way that you can actually grow your business is either by grabbing more market share within your industry or within your geo area, or you expand outside of your geo area to grab market share in other markets. And that opportunity comes by being able to have money in the bank or money saved up to be able to spend some efforts on marketing. And I think the biggest mistake that most people make is as soon as when revenue drops, they cut their lifeline to their business, which is their marketing. It's like, oh, I'll stop doing it on this, or I'll stop doing it on this. Well, you can control your expenses to a certain degree, but you need marketing dollars to feed your top line number. So what most people do is they go into panic mode and they evaluate all of their expenses and they reduce their expenses, but they're just trying to go from losing 20 grand a month to maybe losing 8 grand a month. When in the reality, the way we need to be looking at it is, okay, let me cut these unnecessary expenses, keep my fixed costs as low as possible, and only be trying to spend money on revenue generating activities, and to do so where there's opportunities in a market. And so, and I think that is what most people need to understand, because there is always people buying and selling homes. There's always people doing loans. I mean, there's going to be between 4 and 5 million home sales. So all you have to do is grab a very, very, very small percentage of that to be uber successful. It's not like we're living in an industry where people went from buying 7 million homes a year to 300,000 homes a year. Yes, it's a drop, but all you have to do is expand your piece of the pie while everybody else is panicking, and figure out the best ways to actually generate revenue in opportunities that still make sense for the end user or the buyer.
I love that. I love that as just a way of looking at it in terms of, when the market dips, that's really the time to expand your market share. That's the time to double down on your prospecting, on your marketing efforts. And some of those can be paid, some of those can be free. There's lots of different ways to market your business, but just looking at how can I expand, how can I gain market share during a downshift, I think is a great way to look at it. And I think what most people don't realize is that during these downshifts, a lot of, the transaction volume goes down, but also the number of agents and loan officers in the business also goes down. So in terms of it's all relative. And to your point, people are still buying and selling houses every single day. So I love that as just kind of a framework of how to look at it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about maybe a little bit on tactically how to do that in terms of the marketing stuff and how they can go about expanding their market share.
Yeah. So here's the amazing part about it. And so what I feel like happens a lot of times in the world, technology completely disrupts industries. But what happens is, so my brother is one of the top AI and machine learning developers in the world. I was very blessed. And so he's been an incredible resource for me. He lives over in Europe. And so I've been able to pick his brain for years and years, which has kind of allowed me to always kind of stay ahead of the curve. And what happens is, so people can kind of understand this, is I want you to kind of think of a waterfall. And so, imagine you have, a big bowl on the bottom, a little smaller bowl on top of that, all the way up to the top where you get the tiny cup at the top. Well, what ends up happening is if I have a pitcher of water and I start filling up the tiny cup at the top, Once that tiny cup fills up, it goes to the next cup, the next cup, the next cup. Well, I want you to imagine that water is technological innovation. And I want you to imagine the top cup is in the technology industry. The second cup is the medical industry. The third cup is the financial industry. The fourth cup is the real estate industry. And the fifth cup is the construction industry. So what ends up happening is most people in the real estate world, they wait for products to be introduced into their industry that are industry specific to them. Well, what's happening is the innovation has already occurred and the technology sector's got it, the medical sector's got it, the financial sector's got it, and it finally makes its way down to the real estate world. And so what I've always tried to do is to really stay on top of what new technology is coming out within the technology sector, because then that will allow me to get ahead of the market by 2 or 3 or 4 years before it funnels its way down into the real estate sector. And so this has really allowed me to get really into AI and a lot of the machine learning tactics and a lot of the social media tactics. So I'll give you a couple real tactical insights. So first, I'm gonna talk about some of the social media stuff, and then it's going to layer into some of the use cases of how I'm using AI in marketing to really generate a lot of business without a lot of dollar spent. So
love it.
Coming from a pure brand perspective, here is what 99.9% of entrepreneurs in general, whether you're in real estate, mortgage, title, and other industries, they build a social media account. But what they really use that account for is basically sales funnel. Thereof, they typically have the only thing that they're educating homeowners on or educating their audience on are things that they can have a financial interest from it. Hey, check out this home at 123 Main Street. Hey, I can give you a CMA. Hey, check out this down payment assistance program. Well, here's the reality of it. The average person in America is buying a house once every 4 to 6 years. So they only really need you or want you or care about the content you're producing when they're in the season of buying a house. And so what happens is, most loan officers or real estate agents that create nothing but a lot of real estate or mortgage content, and the people that engage with their content the most and view it the most are other realtors or other loan officers, which is not who you want to go with. So
Right.
What you have to understand is you got to reframe how you position your brand. So meaning this, I live by the rule of 80-20. 80% of the content that I produce has zero to do with any type of sale that I can make. Meaning I'm not just making a bunch of content about mortgage programs and, real estate opportunities, because guess what? People aren't going to tune into my content every single day or every week if they don't care about what I'm saying once every 4 to 7 years. So first thing you have to do is position yourself and your brand as a resource for them that they want to view you and go and learn from you, of somebody that is giving them value that they can make actionable insights from it every day. So case in point, as a real estate agent, my friend Paige, she runs, I think the Utah real estate page, I think is her actual name on Instagram. She made a shift about 1.5 years ago, and her content is really aimed around a lot of interior design stuff, like really cool interior design things. So guess what? Her past clients are constantly turning into her content to see really cool Halloween decorations or the way to new interior design changes, things that want to get them tuned in every single day. And then, of course, about 20% of her content is about open houses or things that are directly related to her making business. And in myself, in the loan space, when I started making content first, I made a bunch of mortgage content, and nobody but loan officers in my family watched my content. That's just the reality of it. And then what I said is I shifted and I said, well, who do I follow? Who do I like to consume content from on a daily basis? And then I looked at what they were teaching, and they were actionable insights that I could use in my regular life outside of the need for me wanting to purchase their service or whatever they did. I mean, you look at Ed Milet. Ed Milet he produces great entrepreneurial content, great motivational content, but he makes all of his money in life insurance. That's
Right.
what How often does he talk about life insurance? Never.
Never.
But guess what? You better believe if you need life insurance, you're probably going to trust Ed Milet because he's given you so much valuable insight over the years. You're like, dude, this guy's a really smart guy. I bet he's also really good at life insurance. And so when it comes from a perspective of the way you need to be putting your content out there, you need to be shifting it away from just all about you. It's not about you. It's about what value can you give your audience on a regular basis that can make an impact in 60 or 90 seconds to change something that they can change in their life to have a more positive impact or more educational. And so once you understand that shift, you create your brand around that, and you consistently do that, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be staying top of mind, and you can break out of your geography area. And you would know as well as I do in real estate, if somebody has a deal and they want to buy a house in Texas and you're not licensed in Texas, great. There's a referral fee you're going to make, right? There's this you're going to make. And so that is the beautiful part about social media. And once you understand that concept and what people are like, well, I don't know what to produce content about. I tell everybody it's very simple. Text your 5 best friends and say, hey, outside of real estate, like buying and selling homes or outside of doing your loan, when would I be one of your first people that you would make a phone call for on advice? And what would that topic be? That's what I did. And my buddies wrote back like, dude, you know everything there is to know about stocks, investing, crypto, scaling a business, all these things. And I was like, really? Like, I guess. Okay, cool. And so I started creating a bunch of content like that. And my content channels went from 500 to close to 500,000 now in a span of 3 or 4 years. And guess what? My business also grew because of that impact I was making by building that annuity of an audience. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, I love that. That's something that I think we talk about as well all the time is if all you're talking about is real estate, you become stale. To your point, people are only moving every, 3 to 5 to 7 years. So they're tuning out that content when they're not paying attention to it. And I love the little nugget you gave about texting your 5 best friends to ask them, like, what would you reach out to me for? Because that gives you an easy framework of things that you can create content about. And I also love the example of kind of like the realtor that you mentioned, Paige, who shifted to doing interior design type content. I mean, there's a million things that you could do that are a lot more interesting than just look at my open house and look at this closing and look at this testimonial type things.
Yep. And I think a lot of it too with people is you forget you got 3 seconds to catch somebody's attention, right? And so what's funny is the way social media has been shifting is from everybody doing talking head videos to now what some of my best performing reels are text on screen with B-roll in the background that loop over and over again, because people are so tired of seeing talking images, talking head videos. They would rather just see an interesting B-roll in the background and read some actionable insights on a screen that they can just look while they're scrolling at work. And so a lot of it you have to really be able to kind of think about doing is you have 3 seconds to get their attention. And I see it so often, and I joke around. Actually, when I was doing a keynote with Tony Robbins about 4 or 5 months ago, I used this example, so I'll explain it here because it kind of resonated well, in their regards as well. And where that kind of comes down to is I've watched, thousands of realtor videos, and they make an open house video like this. And it's something like, hey guys, you got to check out my new open house at 123 Main Street. It's an unbelievable home, in Harveston, Temecula. It's an unbelievable property. Let's go look inside. Let me tell you. Or they'll say, hi, I'm Brian Decker. I want you to check out my open house at 123 Main Street. Okay, first off, nobody cares who you are. They'll see your username if they do. And number 2 is you're not even getting a chance to show them that open house because they've lost interest because you haven't given them anything of value in the first 3 seconds. So how you change that is either by making people laugh, making people angry, or making people question themselves. Those are the only 3 things that people do. So for an example, I would basically, if I was doing that open house video, and if it was you, I'd say, hey, I bet you guys can't afford this house, They're going to be like, what? I mean, I can't afford this house. Hey, I know that house has gotten a lot more expensive, but this one's actually reasonably priced. Let's go take a look at it. You're going to watch that video, right?
Yeah.
And so what you have to be able to do is be yourself and be authentic with it. And then the second part of going in with that is the leveraging the power of AI. And what I mean by that is I've kind of coined the term your digital twin. So when it comes to marketing, what people need to understand from a consumer's perspective, they want personalization. They don't want cookie cutter, repeat, copy thing. Well, that's fantastic, but personalization means time. However, we as business owners, we want to make better use of our time, scale our businesses, and do it with less capital. So how do you take personalization and scale and combine it together? And that's where you can get something called your digital twin. And so this is kind of the concept that I basically coined. So I'll give you a case in point. So there's many different softwares out there now, whether that's a company called Tavis or Synthesia. There's a bunch of different AI software out there where you can make a digital clone of yourself, and they are very, very, very accurate. And so what you basically do is you read a couple minutes of a script and it makes a version of you. And then what you can actually do is let's say, for an example, I create a video and it's about a new program that's going out. Let's use the Hoper program, for example. The new program coming out, backed by the FHA. It's called the Hoper program. And what that basically does is if a home buyer using FHA financing is willing to do 6 to 8 hours of education prior to closing, they can earn $13,000 that they don't have to pay back and do all these other things. It's a super cool program that just came out. Well, as part of that, let's say I do a video on that, and the call to action in that video is, hey, if you guys want information about this, just comment the word hope below and I'll send you some information. Well, when they comment hope below, I use ManyChat, which many people use, which they simply make a comment below. It triggers a DM. But in that DM, I don't just send them a link. What I do is I will say, hey, by the way, are you looking to buy a home in these states? I'll kind of pre-qualify it with some AI questions that ManyChat has. Then at the end of gathering that information, I basically make sure and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to send you a video explaining this program to you. Just do me a favor and let me know what number you want me to text it to. They enter their mobile phone number in the text message. And then what I've built out using Tavis is what happens is as soon as they enter in that phone number, I've collected all of that in ManyChat. So I have their first name, their last name, their phone number, the state at which they're looking to buy. I push that lead over to Tavis. Tavis, in about 30 seconds, creates a custom video that says, hey, Oliver, it was a pleasure chatting with you on Instagram. I know you're looking to buy a property in California. Check out my Hoper video. I just wanted to make this real quick for you. Check it out. And so that's all AI. And I fed it in those key fields. So now they're getting a personalized video from me that says that. And then as they watch that video, there's a click link to apply in that video. They click the link and apply. And they're in their minds are like, whoa, that's pretty dope that this dude just made me a video of him like telling me and teaching me this, right? And so what I've done is I've taken the personalization and I've taken the scalability that AI delivers, and then I've partnered it with a very valuable hook and program, and I've used it as a lead generation tool. And I mean, Tavis is like, I don't know, $500 a month or something like that. ManyChat's like $14 a month. And you can find a consultant on Fiverr, and they can build them both out for you for like $150 for the whole thing. It's making sure that you don't just make content, but then you also use that content to not just send them a link, but to start a conversation in ManyChat, capture their information, and then finish it off with a personalization of a video. And that's like one way that I've been able to really kind of use and scale within my businesses.
Dude, I love that. That's insane right there. That's some next level automation. And the things I wrote down is Tavis, Tovis. I'm
It's
guessing.
it's TAUVS, and then
T
is
O V S.
TAUVS. And it's just that's one, and then Synthesia is another one, which I'll send you the links, and you can put them in the show notes for all of your viewers.
Cool, awesome. And then the other one I wrote down was ManyChat. That's also
ManyChat.
one we've been using for a while. Awesome
Yep.
tool. That allows you to kind of automate your social media follow up. If someone leaves a comment, they can get the DMs going and kind of filter leads from there. But wow, that's awesome right there.
Oh,
Love
good.
that. So just kind of shifting gears a little bit. Obviously, you've built quite a few successful businesses, and you're always kind of on the cutting edge of technology. And I know you're also big on like habits. And so I'm just curious, what would you say is like the number one habit that you've developed to kind of drive all of your success?
Yeah, so it's really kind of a two-pronged approach, and I joke around. It's not, it's not cold showers and sauna like many people always say it is. But the reality, it really came in. I learned this, and I can't take credit for it, so I need to give credit where it's due. So one of my mentors, a gentleman by the name, I mentioned his name earlier, Matt Ishbia. He's the owner of the Phoenix Suns. He owns United Wholesale Mortgage, biggest mortgage company in the country. And I've spent a good amount of time with him, and he's been a friend of mine for a while now. And one of the things I noticed with him was he did two things exceptionally well. The first thing he did was he protected his time to such a level I've never seen before. Everything in his day is broken down into 15-minute intervals. And I'll give you an example of this. We always set up, I know you, Oliver, have done this probably millions of times. Somebody sends you a Zoom invite for a meeting. It's either 30 minutes or it's an hour, right? And what happens is you spend the first 10 minutes of that meeting BSing back and forth, and then you ease your way into basically the meat and potatoes of the meeting. And then usually, depends how long you BS for, you go over, and it's this endless cycle. So one of the things I started doing and took from him is when people book a time on my calendar and they want to do a meeting, I tell them 15-minute meeting, please come prepared. And anything we want to go over, please email my assistant the notes beforehand. We got 15 minutes. And guess what? All those 30-minute meetings without anything being left out started becoming 10 to 12-minute meetings all over and over and over again. And the hour meeting, they even made it to a 30-minute meeting or less. And so what I started doing was I looked at everything in my day as in a 15-minute interval. And by doing that, I knew, okay, hey, I'm going to give myself a mental break for a second. I need to go chat with my coworker about X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. I got 10 minutes to be able to do that and come back. And I just really organized my time like that. And why I did that was I started making the promise to my family, because I was getting home 7:45, and I leave at 4:30 to go to the gym in the morning. And my kids started getting, to the age where they were going to remember, and I wanted to spend time with them. So I was like, hey, I got to be out of the office by 6, and I can't get up any earlier than 4:30 because I need at least some sleep. So that gives me a 6:30 to a 5:30 window of working time. Well, okay, I have 14 hours of work. How do I get it into an 11-hour day with running 3 different companies? And so I first did was I started doing everything in a 15-minute interval. The second thing I started really doing is I forced myself to view everything I was doing in a day, and I literally wrote it down. And I said, okay, is this a skill or is this a task? If it's a skill, it belongs in my bucket. If it's a task, I need to delegate it. And so I found, for example, just me going through my emails on a constant basis was taking me like an hour and 30 minutes a day of just sorting my emails. So I changed my emails, and now I hired when I couldn't initially afford it, I hired a virtual assistant. She was in my emails, and everything that I needed to view, she would drop in what was called Brian Rocks, like things I had to do that day. Then she created another folder, Brian to see. Those are any emails I didn't need to do anything with it. I just needed to see it. And then what I did is I took it to a crazy level, and I built a chat GBT version of myself, which is this is to the other level. I just finished doing this. What I did is I fed all the content I've ever produced, all the keynotes I've done, all these Zoom meetings, and I hired somebody to feed it all into chat GBT. So it was something crazy. It was like 30,000 pages of transcript, fed it to it. And then what I did is I gave that to my assistants. So my two assistants, Beto and Jessica, they now, when questions come in, they can ask chat GBT Brian and he'll answer it. And like if it's basic questions, they're responding as me. So I freed up all this time. Now, you don't need to probably go to the chat GBT route yet, but just training your assistant, even a VA, hey, start them off with having them respond to an email and put it as a draft. And all you're doing is looking in your folder. Because I guarantee you, people time themselves. They're spending an hour a day just sorting emails. I don't need this one. I need this one. This is spam. This is this. And so those are the two things that really allowed me to get the most out of my day.
I love that. I love the skill versus task, how you break things down on like, I need to do this. If not, I'm delegating it, whether it's finding an AI, finding a software, hiring a freelancer, whatever it is. And I really like the protecting of the time as well. I also started doing that. My Calendly now, the only option is a 15-minute meeting.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's made such a difference because to your point, the amount of time that's just wasted on a 30-minute meeting where half of the meeting is just stuff that doesn't need to be there. It's just condensing that, saves time, allows you to focus on other things.
Yeah. And what I did too is I have two meeting types, 15-minute meeting or an hour mentorship call. And I charge $750 an hour to do it. And because because what I'm sure it's just like you, people want to ask me for my time all the time. Hey, Brian, will you help me with this or that? Yeah, sure, I will. But I make a couple $1,000 an hour. I'm willing to discount that to help you. But and people book it. I mean, I probably have one booking a day on that people do it. But now it's at least worth my time to do it rather than people just, booking my calendar just to ask me things just because you got to protect your time. And I try to be a very generous person because I didn't come from anything and I want to help people. But there also comes a point where my wife told me, she's like, yeah, babe, but you're now taking an hour away from you spending time with your kids every night. Like, so what, like, if that's fine, if you come home and you're like an hour late, at least make sure you got paid for it because, I'm sure that they're not going to be willing to not go to pick up their kids from school to, help you out with something. And if they are, then, they're going to be, it must be a pretty big deal for them to tell you that. So they'll probably either can fit it in 15 minutes or they'll buy your time for an hour. And it's a great move.
I love that. Yeah. And I also love what you did with your email box because I do think that's another huge time waster. Obviously, another cool tool just to mention for those that don't want or can't afford to get the virtual assistant is it's called Sane Later.
Yeah.
It's basically an AI for your inbox. When you first upload it, it'll go through your entire history of every email you've ever sent, responded to, and then it basically will put everything that's not important into the Sane Later box. And then you can kind of flick through that every couple of days just to make sure there's nothing in there, but then only the more important stuff gets through. So just
so cool. AI is so cool. And what's crazy is I was talking to my brother about AI, and this just be good for viewers to hear this, and it kind of puts things into perspective. So to give you guys an idea, when ChatGPT first came out, which was like November of 2020-ish, right around that time, ChatGPT had about an IQ of about 50, but in everything. Okay. So to give you an idea with IQ, like Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, they were 160 to 170. I think the highest IQ ever measured for a woman was Maurice Curie, which is like a 190. And there's a couple other people that are into the 200s. But the average human being is somewhere between 90 and 100-ish. And so now here we are when ChatGPT 4 came out, it had an IQ just a year and a half later of 110 in everything. Okay. So that means it basically almost tripled its intelligence in a matter of 18 months. Well, because the way AI and machine learning works, it's an exponential growth. So it's not, if it added 1 IQ point every day, well, now it's adding 1.6 IQ, then 1.8 IQ. It builds on itself exponentially. So I was talking to my brother in the space, and he said by the end of 2025, it'll be about a 300 IQ and everything. And in about 5 years from now, it'll be about 1,000 IQ and everything. So I want you guys to, when you're thinking about your business, and I want you guys, and this is why it's so important to build a brand and to do and be focused on an industry that is built on relationships and based on a skill set and that AI won't be able to mimic because of this. Think about this. We know that Amazon right now has been hiring, or in essence building, about 4 robots for every person that it used to hire. Okay, but that robot can do the work of about 5 different people. So that means right now Amazon, when they would be normally hiring 20 humans, they're hiring 1 human and 4 robots. Okay, and it's getting more and more that way. So what you have to understand is you got to look at your business and say, okay, if ChatGPT has an IQ of 400 in a year and a half from now, I could ask it and say, hey, please evaluate everything in the roofing industry. Create me a business plan that you think will be able to disrupt the industry that none of my competitors are doing. Create me a website, create me a marketing plan, and give me a hiring plan and who I need to hire to be able to do that. And it will be able to do that. It'll be able to do that in no time at all. So what's going to be happening in our world is the days of people being a task monkey, as I like to call them, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but they just are task. There's not a level of skill involved in what they can do. They are going to be replaced by AI. We are only a few years away from having the very first billion-dollar company with 1 employee. It will happen. And so what you have to ask yourself, the world as we know it today is going to be very different in 6 years from now. So when you look at that, when it comes to your investing, you want to be investing in things that are going to be growing exponentially with technology. Why do you think NVIDIA is trading at such a crazy multiple? Why do you think Tesla's trading at such a crazy multiple? All of these things that are leading into what's called the exponential age are going to be crushing it on profit margins, whereas the average person that is running a business with a bunch of clerks that are taking orders that can be done by a kiosk machine, those employees are going to be replaced. And so people have to understand, you don't want to be your grandfather that thought computers were never going to take on, so he never learned computers. My grandfather, bless his heart, he's almost 90 years old now. He worked at a company, a paper mill company, and in about late 1970s, early 1980s, they put out something that says, hey, we need to learn how to use this computer. And he was in his 40s at the time, and he volunteered to learn how to use the computer. Well, fast forward 15 years later, he was the CFO of the company because he adopted technology when everybody else shunned it away. So I'm not saying that we all need to be machine learning and AI experts, but you have to understand what machine learning and AI is going to do, the efficiencies it's going to drive, and figure out how to build a moat around your business, because that truly is going to be the only way that you're going to have a long-lasting career in whatever you're doing. And if you're in an industry hearing this and you know that AI could disrupt it, have your run with it, but I would start to figure out a way how to leverage some of this efficiencies and technology, because don't feel bad for people that are going to lose their jobs, because just as many jobs that are going to be lost, there's going to be just as many people that are going to be making their salary and more who adopt this technology. We don't live in socialism. We live in capitalism. Don't feel sorry for somebody. Give them the tools and point them in the right direction to be able to serve themselves. And that's what people really need to understand.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot there for sure because I do think that, you know, a lot of people fear AI and they have the Terminator scenario
Yeah.
in one side, and then there's the other people that have the utopia scenario. And I'm sure it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. And I agree that, you know, the people that adopt it the fastest. And one thing I hear a lot from the AI circles is um, AI won't replace people. It's the people using AI that will replace people. And I
Yes.
think that's the important takeaway is that,
Very well
to your
said.
point, the quicker you can learn it, and just start with Chat GPT, right? Start with just using it. I mean, I'm using it every day now, and then branch out from there. Do you have any, while we're on the AI topic, do you have any tools that you recommend in terms of just things that have made your life easier, business better, things like that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I know is probably the greatest thing I've really ever done. And I know before people are like, well, this sounds complex. I'm going to break it down very, very simple for you. You guys can go on Fiverr and you can find somebody that is a Chat GBT developer or expert. These people are anywhere between $25 and $100 an hour, depending on where you want to go. And if you're somebody that has made a lot of video content, has a lot of emails back and forth with your clients, just has a lot of Zoom recordings of your things, just all of those things out there. And if you haven't, start recording conversations with your clients, over Zoom. Start doing these things. And what you can do is reach out to one of these people and say, hey, I want to build a Chat GBT persona of myself. And what they will do is I gave the person, which in this case was our COO here at my AI software company. And what he did is I gave him access to all my Zoom recordings. I gave him access to all my email inbox, all of my content, all of my keynotes, all of the trainings for our loan officers and everything else. And he went in, and it took him probably about 20 hours, but he went in and got all those transcripts, organized them, and fed it into Chat GBT to build my brain inside of Chat GBT. And then what happens is now I have a Chat GBT version of myself that has all of my knowledge. So rather than everybody asking me questions all the time, they all have the Chat GBT on their computer, and they could just ask it a question, just like they would ask me. And then what happens is about once a week, I go in there and I ask it questions that I know the answers to that are a little complex, and I teach it. I just say, no, please respond as this. It's not a lot of time invested. You will be blown away at the efficiencies of the time. I mean, Oliver, think about it. All the emails you get, if you could literally clone yourself that was 80 to 90% as good as you for all the people that ask you questions. And here's the best part. If I had to pay for it, it would have probably been in total $1,000, maybe $1,000. And now client, you can take it and put it as a chat widget on your website. You can take it and have it be your responder to your ManyChat. You can give it to all your employees. You can build it to train people. There's so many use cases of it, and don't be afraid of it. Like, it's an unbelievable efficiency solution. And I can tell you from somebody whose brother is on the forefront of it, yes, we've all watched the movie iRobot. We've all watched these things. Okay, but what you have to understand, and I'm not saying that could never happen, but what we have to talk about here is we are using technology to provide a better experience for our customers, for our employees, and to spend a little bit more time with our families. It's a win-win-win all the way around. It's not being lazy. It literally is providing them a better answer, because ChatGPT gives them better answers sometimes than I would have given them, because sometimes we have better days than other days,
Yeah, most definitely. And I love, the training Chat GPT thing. It's actually really not complicated at all. So for the people that are not techies out there, you can watch a YouTube video, you can find people on Fiverr, and just figure out something that takes you a good amount of time. Because I did the similar thing when I prepare for these podcasts. it was taking me sometimes an hour or two to like get all the questions together, research the guests, this and that. And I basically went in and I did the same thing. I fed ChatGPT transcripts of every episode, and I created a little Founders Club GPT that now all I have to do is I type in the guest's name, I type in the topic, and I type in the industry, and it automatically creates a list of 25 questions. It automatically creates a YouTube description. It automatically creates 5 versions of a YouTube title. And so it just takes all that and just saves so much time just off of a little bit of training and a little bit of work up front.
Yeah. And what's so crazy is it's funny. You're a very successful entrepreneur. I've had the chance to get to know very, very successful entrepreneurs, and every single one of them is doing exactly what you and I are doing. They are embracing this for an efficiency standpoint. They are not looking at it to say, hey, how do I fire all my employees? What they are doing is, how can I provide quicker, better experience for my customers and my employees? And that's what they want to be able to do. And so you have to view it in that way and not be like, oh, I don't trust this. It's going to take my information. Here's the news flash. Every piece of information that's on the internet is public information. Every video you post, every picture you post, it's all out there publicly. So like, you're not going to tell it something that it already can't find. So like, you might as well use it to make it your life a little easier.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. And if you don't believe us, just go skip trace yourself and you'll see everything that's already out there.
No kidding.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, you just mentioned, and I know this is a big part of, what you're all about, especially these days, is the investing side of things. I know you're big on like building for the future and things like that. And you mentioned finding things that, can plug into these exponential technologies, the AIs, the cryptos, things like that. So how are you looking at investing now? Let's assume that, our listeners, they're successful, they're hustling, they're making money. And now what should they be doing with that extra that they've got?
Yeah, great question. And so I'm gonna explain this pretty simply so everybody can understand. So the way I want you to view, most people have the old view of the way the economy works. So we've all heard that the way you have an economy is you kind of have a ramp up period. Then we have this crazy expansionary period. Then we have a slowdown period. And then we have our recession. And what we always taught in school was, and because this is the way it worked from, the 1800s up until 2008, was you had about 6 months of a year ramp up. We had a 10-year boom in the stock market or real estate market. Then it slows down. And then we go through like a year to 2 years where it's just a crazy, crappy recession. And we've all known, and it's a testament today where people can't wrap their brain around why the real estate market hasn't crashed, why this hasn't crashed, why all these things haven't happened, why is the stock market still going up? And the reason for all of this is the framework we had been taught in school on the way to evaluate an investment was basically buy real estate when you're in a recession and then basically sell your real estate at the peak of the expansionary period, and just do it over again. Buy stocks when they're down, when there's blood in the streets, sell stocks when you're in an expansionary period. And that's the way people have invested. But everybody got thrown a curveball where they're like, shoot, the real estate market's been going strong for 14 years. Hey, the stock market's been on a run for all this period of time. And the reason for that is everything changed. All the cycles changed when one thing happened. And I'll make this valid for a point that everybody can understand. So let's say you, Oliver, 10 years ago, you're $5,000 in credit card debt. And let's say your credit card debt interest rates went from 10% to 20%. Well, yeah, you may not like your payment went up $100 a month, but it's not going to affect your overall well-being of your family's health with just being $5,000 into debt. Well, now imagine you're $200,000 into debt, and now your interest rates on those credit cards doubled. That's a disaster. You are panicking. It is ruining your life. Well, you are the federal government. The federal government prior to 2008 was a few $1 trillion in debt. It took us 220 years to get $1 trillion in debt. And then when 2008 happened, that went every country in the world got crazy in debt. And then during COVID, it even went crazier. So now the United States is adding $1 trillion to our debt every 100 days. And it took us 200 years to get $1 trillion in debt. So, newsflash to everybody, the federal government has to make those interest payments on that debt. They issue bonds, basically IOUs. Other countries buy them, and they pay whatever the interest rate is on that debt, which is determined by the Federal Reserve sets these interest rates. Well, guess what happens? When our interest rates go up 3x, and we are 20 times more in debt than what we were, we cannot afford to make these interest payments. So what happens is we are not allowed to go through the normal economic cycles. What happens is those periods that were like a year, 10 years, 1 year, 2 year, now are much shorter. You maybe have a 6-month period of a recession, a 6-month period of slight expansion, a year-long period of crazy expansion, 6-month period of this. And all of that follows the debt cycle. So when the federal government issues its debt, it issues its debt usually in 2-year, 3-year, 5-year debt. So guess what happens? When your debt comes up and is due, and the United States has trillions of dollars in debt, that when it issued that debt, rates were 1%, and now today rates are 4%, the federal government has two options. Number one, they refinance that debt at today's interest rates, just like you would refinance your mortgage, or two, they pay off that debt. We have no money to pay off any of our debt. So last year alone, we had $13 trillion of debt that needed to be refinanced, that they were paying 1.5% average interest rate on, and they had to refinance it at 3.5% or 4%, which means what we have to pay in interest way more than double. So newsflash, what happens is even though we're supposed to be going into a recession, the Federal Reserve, we all know inflation is not really low. Inflation is still high, but they spin it that inflation is ticking down because they exclude all these things that are actually really affecting inflation for an excuse to drop interest rates, not for you and I, but because they have to pay this interest on this crazy debt, and they know they got to print more debt. So what happens is now we live in a period of time which is called exponential age. And what that means is I want you to think of it as seasons of the year. You have the springtime, the summertime, the fall time, and the winter. So wintertime is a recession. Springtime is when things start to settle out a little bit. You come out of that. Summertime is when things go through the roof. Fall is when things slow down before you go into the winter. Well, instead of this just being how well the economy is doing, it is all tied to the money supply. So the money supply, I want you to think of it as like your personal bank account. You, Oliver, are making a lot more investments when you have a bunch of money in your checking account and it's going up every month than you are making investments when your bank balance is going down every month. Well, that bank balance is the total money supply that is in effect, meaning how much money is circulating. Well, guess what? We've had 2 years where the money supply is falling. About 4 months ago, the money supply started to tick up when government started stimulating again. China stimulating, the United States stimulating. So rather than how you feel about the economy, you need to pay attention to what is the money supply doing. When the money supply is going up, which it is now, that means people are going to be buying things, both institutions, governments, all of that. So right now, we are getting ready to go into macro summer. Money supply going up, interest rates are falling. So what do you buy during those times? Well, there's 4 real big things that I buy during macro summer. Number one, I buy technology stocks because technology stocks are what's called a risk on asset, which means when there's money supply and people have a little bit more money, they can invest in things that are a little bit riskier. Gold is a risk off asset. So right now I'm buying stocks, which most people like Amazon. Amazon, for an example, is trading at its lowest valuation that it's traded at, which is crazy, excluding the .com failure. So Amazon, I'm buying. Tesla, I'm buying. I'm buying Alibaba. China's stimulating. So I'm investing in these types of stocks. Then also, I'm investing a lot in cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency, once every 4 years, we have a Bitcoin halving. The price goes on an exponential run about 6 months after the halving, and it ends about a year after the halving. So that 6-month anniversary is coming up at the end of this month. So 6 months, like every cycle I do this, like the last cycle, I turned 500 grand into 7 million. This cycle, I'll probably turn 3 million into probably 15 million. But what happens is, I know as soon as the money supply flattens out or starts to tick down, I sell out of my technology stocks. I sell out of my cryptocurrency. I move into gold. I'll move into safe haven assets like long-term rentals and real estate. I invest in cash at that time, those types of things. So when it comes to investing, you have to understand your environment and not how you feel. And that is a piece of advice I can give to somebody.
I love that. And for someone wanting to track where this money supply number is that a chart? Is that a
It's super
statistic,
easy.
or what should be watching?
Yeah. So there's a website called Fred, and it's the federal government's data website. It's just like Fred, like the name. Just type in M2 supply or money supply 2 Fed, and it'll come up on an interest rate. It'll come up on a chart, and you see the graph. And you'll see the graph start to tick up in like July. And we should be in a cycle probably the next 12 to 16 months where that's why people can't understand it. Like people are like, why is the stock market still so high? And I've been screaming, guys, the stock market is going to go up. The money supply is going up. It's going to happen. And people can't wrap their brains around it because it's so different than any time before. But it's because we're a debt-ridden society, and the Fed has to lower rates and stimulate the economy, or we go bankrupt. It's very simple.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if what I'm hearing you say, it's when that money supply number is going up, we're going into more risk on things like crypto, tech stocks, that types of things. And when the number dips back down, we're looking at more of the traditional, the golds, the real estate, land, whatever, cash, those types of things.
So real estate will go up during this period. So 100%. What I personally do is I like to buy real estate when it's coming down a little bit. So if I'm a real estate investor right now, there's 2 entry points that I'm looking at. Number one, every single time when we go into an election season, October through February, you get steals on real estate. The market freezes up in panic. Especially right now, interest rates are still high. Sellers are losing, kind of being worried going to a season. You can get, as well as I do, you see properties all the time getting under contract for 10% less than their asking price was. And what happens is, as soon as those interest rates start to come down, all those buyers come back into the market and begin to move that real estate back up. And that real estate will go up. And that real estate will go up in most markets. In my personal opinion, the markets that are the most resilient and where I am still would be buying property right now is a market, for an example, like San Diego. Why San Diego? They have no new construction and they have very low shadow inventory of Airbnbs. So we all know people that loaded up on Airbnbs in 2020 and 2021. Airbnb tourism is way down. Hotels are actually starting to come back up because people are kind of realizing I kind of like room service and all these other things that come with it. So markets that have very low new construction means there is no forced supply on the market. We just have to wait for sellers to sell their houses, and nobody knows when that market is. And San Diego is not a market that saw an insane Airbnb bust, like, for example, Lake Havasu did, or Nashville did, or Phoenix did. And so a market like San Diego is landlocked. It has very low new construction inventory, and it doesn't have a tremendous amount of shadow inventory from Airbnbs. Amazing market. Terrible market, and I don't mean to say it because the hurricane's there. It's not the hurricane, is a market, for an example, like Tampa. Tampa, insane levels of new construction, insane levels of Airbnb, and on top of all of that, they also, too, there's so many other areas in Florida that are undeveloped that can still have a massive amount of supply. So markets like Tampa, markets like Dallas, markets like Austin, those markets, not very good markets. Incredible markets, Boston, San Diego, even the little area of Scottsdale, like areas like that, they're going to do very, very well because of those metrics. So what I just tell everybody, if you're a real estate investor, see how much new construction's in that market, and go on Airbnb and check out how many listings for Airbnb are in that market. Even if that's the only two things you looked at, you're going to make a better investing guess than probably 90% of real estate investors.
Yeah, I love that. Simple. I like keeping things simple.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, I certainly appreciate all the insights. There's been a ton of good stuff on this episode. For those that want to learn more, want to connect with you deeper, how can they do that?
Yeah, for sure. So you guys can follow me on Instagram. It's just the Brian Decker with an I. And for a lot of you guys that are like, dude, I really want to learn this investing stuff. So I worked with and I built a community called Wealth Society where I teach everybody how to invest in stocks, crypto, real estate, all this stuff that I do. And I wanted to make it super affordable for people because I feel like there's a big missing link there. So I have a free community there. And then I have a community where we do like weekly coaching and wealth labs directly with me. And even that's only $39 a month. So I wanted to really help the masses with it rather than using it as this massive profit center. So those are probably the two best places to find me is, Wealth Society. You can check it on my Instagram or just go to school, SKOL, type in Wealth Society and find it there, or check me out on Instagram.
Love it. Yeah, that's huge. And then before we wrap up, you got any hot crypto tips? Any hot picks?
Yeah, I'll give you guys some. So like I said, this is everything I give you guys is stuff I own. So I like to break everything down. If people always ask me like, hey, Brian, what's a good stock to buy? I tell everybody, well, you want to have a basket. You want to hit like 5 different industries. So and the same thing is with crypto. Crypto isn't everything trying to be money. People now, when they launch a crypto company, it's a normal company, just rather than going publicly traded and spending $100 million in 4 years to go public, they can actually do it through a different corporate structure and go right and access the public markets right away. So you guys have to understand that. So within the crypto sector, what I like to tell people, if I was going to buy 5 projects that gave you a diversified thing, I would obviously always have Bitcoin. Then what I would obviously buy after that would be Solana. Then after that, I would check out a protocol called SUI, which is SUI. You can research on it or you can follow me on that. Then I know it sounds crazy, but meme coins, they are sports betting. So more people invest in sports betting every year than they do in the stock market. So in the crypto world, they use meme coins as like their way to gamble. So you want to take dumb money, which is what I call people that just buy speculatively in random things. And you want to be what coins your barber is going to buy when the market goes crazy. So I recommend a coin called Pepe. It's P-E-P-E on that one. And then the 5th play I recommend is an AI protocol that I recommend everybody checking out. And that's a really good one. And that's called near, just like you're far or near. So those would be 5 is Bitcoin, Solana, SUI, Pepe, and near. That would be a really good diversified portfolio that I think you'd be very happy with.
I love that. Yep. Those are all strong picks. I would concur. I actually own all those as well. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And again, man, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. And for everybody listening, check out the links in the description. And if you like money, you like real estate, hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Brian.
Of course.